thanks everyone for joining the Workspace Admins Insights video series. This is the very first event that we're doing, so thanks for joining episode 1 with us. When I say we, so this is myself, Kim Nilsson, Dominic Kugelman, and Brian Kim. We are 4 admins that have been using Google, Google Workspace now, is it called, for many years, some from as far back as when it started. Fortunately, Dominic was a bit young at that time. He was about 10 when that started, so he wasn't using it quite as long as us. But he's definitely using it quite a lot now. So the 4 of us are spread across 4 different countries. So I'm in the US, Kim's in Sweden, Dominic in Germany, and Brian in Canada. And we've kind of come together thinking that we would start a video series specific for Google admins, in-depth tech discussions on third-party tools like GAM, specific things, like the Windows management, which is an upcoming session we're doing in January with Ravi Kumar, the PM, with the Cloud Identity team. So we'll be hosting events on a regular basis, at least once a month, and probably even more than that. So if you've signed up already and indicated your preference on being invited and attending future events, we'll be sending out info following this event and future ones. Recordings will go onto YouTube, so we'll have a YouTube channel where these recordings will go, so you can refer back to them if you ever need to, and share them with colleagues and anyone that might need to. So a little bit about myself. I am I've been kind of working with Google for many years in an IT role in the various companies I've been at. Spent some time in a Google partner, and now I'm kind of volunteering my time over at a kind of a stealth mode startup that's going to be launching in the UK called Chaser as a CIO over there. Kim, Dominic, Brian, Kim, why don't you go next? Quick intros on you, and we'll intro Ross at the end.
Yeah, so I'm Kim Nilsson. I'm a Google certified innovator and collaboration engineer, and I work as an ICT educator in Lomma in the south of Sweden. And I consult for all the Swedish Google partners. And I've been using GAM for many years. I don't remember how many years, but a handful at least. And I'm a frequent caller to Ross. And we have interesting talks in the middle of the night about the new things. And next morning, there's the new feature. So I'm a big fan of GAM Advanced.
I think, Dominic, I see you next on my list of tiles here. Why don't you go next?
Okay, then. Hello, I'm Dominic. I'm the co-founder and chief of vision of 22 Consulting. I'm a Google Cloud partner originating out of Germany, with recently launched into the US. And we are, I'm basically the originator of this, where I posted a quick chat into one of those Slack communities, and these 3 people responded and said, yeah, we're in and we're gonna do this. So I'm super excited that we have 153 people here right now, and the list is keep growing. So hope you all learned something today, and thanks Ross for joining as well.
Yeah, and I'm Brian Kim. I work for Strata Prime, a Google partner based out of Toronto, Canada, as a service delivery manager. And I've seen Ross. He's always eager to jump on calls with you, and I've seen him in his server room many times. So this is my first time seeing in a different environment. So this is very exciting.
All right, thanks for the intros, everyone. So I think finally, Ross, I wanted to intro yourself and then take it away with what you want to show us today.
Okay, so my name is Ross Scroggs. I've been a programmer for 47 years and started a software company in the late 70s and sold it in 2001 and retired. And since then, I've been volunteering at various schools. I'm in Oakland, California. I volunteer at 3 schools that somehow are related to schools my daughter went to, and I've been doing technical and networks at work. All of the schools switched to Google Apps for Education in the summer of 2013. And we quickly discovered that you needed some tool like GAM, and then we discovered GAM to do that. as a programmer of a long time, I look at the code and I'm going, well, gee, it certainly makes everybody's life easier, but it's lacking consistency, it's lacking error checking. And I say, oh, well, here, Jay, what about this? What about that? And his and my programming styles are quite different. And so it became clear that I needed to make a separate version. So I fork off from Jay's version and made something called GAM Advanced. Worked on GAM Advanced, continued to make contributions to Jay's version. And then I really started to extend it. So then it got to be called GAM Advanced X. Okay, so on we go, on we go, on we go. Then Team Drive support comes out. So the GAM Advanced X turns into GAM Advanced XTD. So there were sort of two versions, the X version and the XTD version. Time passes, and then Python 3 sort of comes out, and so now GAM ADV XTD becomes GAM ADV XTD 3. Okay, and at that point, Steve convinced me to drop all the other versions, which makes it much simpler in my life. So mostly what I spend my time doing is volunteering to schools, and then responding to people like you who say, gee, what about this feature? What about that feature? Could you add this? Could you add that? How do you do this? And how do you do that? And so the presentation today is sort of focusing on output. You know, how do you get intelligent output out of GAM? So that's what we're going to be doing. So should I start presenting now, Steve, if that makes sense?
Yeah, go ahead and share your screen and dive in.
And full disclosure, I'm a noob at this, and I should establish my technical credentials by holding up, I do this for lots of people, my flip phone. Okay, so this sort of establishes, gee, what does Ross know? Okay, so here we go.
Ross is usually the one looking at other people's screens rather than presenting his own. So
right.
It's a change for him today.
Okay, so what we're going to be talking about today is sort of output from GAM. So this screen here is sort of my notes to follow along, and I'll be switching to things that are bigger to see. So in GAM, there are sort of basically two kinds of output. Well, the output goes to two places. It goes to standard out and it goes to standard error. What goes to standard out? Well, successful command completion messages, you know, user Bob updated, this, that, and the other. Unsuccessful command completion messages like, gee, who's user Bob? Okay. You'll notice if you do things, there are lots of what I call getting messages, you know, getting Chrome OS devices, getting drive files, getting this. Those all messages go to standard error. And there's in fact a GAM config command that will just make them go away altogether. Then, gee, you know, info commands and show commands put output to standard out. Typically look like indented list of keywords and values. And then there's print command output. How do I, you know, when you want to see things in CSV format. So if we do GAM info user test simple, let me hide this so I can see.
Can you press the hide button, Ross?
GAM if user quick. This is sort of human, what I call human readable output. It's designed to do a command and see it. It's indented so you can see what's going on. If we do GAM user test simple print user, we'll say all fields just to make everybody crazy. And you'll notice that when I went to school, which was a long time ago, boys took shop, they didn't take typing. Okay. So this will explain a certain amount of the stuff that goes on here. So throughout GAM, there's sort of the difference between show, printed on the screen, you know, in an indented format, and print, which is I want a CSV file kind of output. Okay. So that's fundamental. There are a handful of places where print and show both mean print. I mean, this is one of the things where I've tried to make it much more consistent, but GAM Advanced tries to be completely backwards compatible with the J's standard GAM. And so there are a handful of places where show means print. Sorry. Okay. So, gee, those are the kind of things we get out. Where does it go? Well, typically by default, it all just comes to your screen. Okay, and certainly for info and show, that's sort of a reasonable place for the command, for the output to go. But oftentimes you say, oh, well, I want to capture this into a file. And so both, I'm mostly a Mac user, but on Mac OS and Linux and Windows command prompt and PowerShell, there's basic command line redirection built in. Gee, I want to send the output to some file, or I want to dump it into the bit bucket, or I want to put standard error somewhere. So there are all those ways to do things. I mean, you can say, GAM user, go to we can redirect that into a file, and we can do more free.csv. Gee, there's the output. If we go back to the info user here, there, we can redirect the output with command line tools. And for lots of things, that works pretty well. Okay, but as we move down the road here, what you're going to discover are there places where that breaks down. Okay, where you don't have quite the control you want, or in some cases, just terrible things happen. So some time ago, I built in redirection into GAM. And so here, if we go here, and we go to, and so I'll jump back and forth over here. These are the wiki pages. So as we go along, we can refer to these pages about, gee, what's going on. So there's file redirection. Okay, well, you can redirect standard out. You can redirect standard error. And in particular, there's something called redirect CSV. And remember, when we print stuff, it's still just going to standard out. But redirect CSV means, okay, look, this is CSV output. I want special handling of stuff from print commands to send it into a file. You can specify character sets. You can sort to drive if you want to output the file and upload it somewhere. So this is a replacement for the command line redirection. You can continue in the cases where it's simple to use command line redirection because it takes a whole lot more typing to say redirect standard out than to type greater than. But I would recommend that you sort of get used to this mode, because in the more complicated and sophisticated cases, the command line redirection just breaks down. It doesn't do what you want to do. So if we look through here, there are various options, some of which are almost never used. There's append options if you want to append output to another file. And redirecting CSV, you can say, I just don't want the headers, and these are very sort of special cases. Redirect standard out with append and standard error with append can come up more often if you're sort of doing a handful of commands and want all the output in one file. Okay. All right, so now we go, okay, gee, let's do some redirection here. Okay, so the idea here is I've made a little file here called user.csv, hand-generated little file. So what we're going to do is use this as the source of doing things. So we can say, oh, well, gee, why don't we in fact print the file list for these various users? So we can grab this command, come over here, paste it in. And so what we're saying is We're going to read the CSV file, users.csv, get the user column, and print file list for these. And we just want the names and MIME types of these files. So again, we're just using regular old command line redirection. And G, here's a bunch of files. Okay. If we come back over here, the equivalent with redirect here. Gets us exactly the same output, okay? But we're using the redirect, the built-in GAM redirection rather than command line redirection. So if we look at the file, exactly the same data, trust me, okay? But now it gets more complicated. Suppose that CSV file had 1,000 users in it. You go, ooh, I know what we'll do. We'll do multiprocessing. Okay, rather than just using the CSV file command up here, which is just read these people and serially process it. You say, oh, well, I know about GAM CSV. So let's do it this way. Using command line redirection. And this is all that's available in basic GAM. Okay, so if you do that, now things get a little complicated. Now if we look at the file list, we get a header row for every user, and the data is all jumbled up together. Because when you do GAM CSV, there's a master GAM, and then there's a slave for every one of those users, and they all run independently. So when we're doing that file redirection, everybody is writing to the same file at the same time. They don't know anything about each other. And all the data is coming in. And so with standard GAM, you would now take this file and go, okay, sort out, throw away all the extra header rows. And in this particular case, since there are only 3 columns, that would work. But if you've had other fields that had repeating values like permissions, the columns don't line up because all the guys wrote their headers to the file, but that doesn't mean they line up. So redirection completely breaks down when you're trying to do multiple users, okay? And if you try to do that with advanced GAM, it's even uglier in some sense, because now all of the sub processes don't know about what's going on, and the output still sort of gets jumbled up, okay? Again, so we're going, all right. What do we do about that? Okay, well, oh, sorry, that's the wrong. Yeah, what we say is, gee, we're going to do, oh, here, this one here, sorry, that one here, here. So this is sort of maybe even worse than J's. It all comes to the screen because the lower guys don't know anything about the redirection. They go, gee, this doesn't work very well. So this is where now the key thing that's going to start to help here is this multiprocess keyword. If we look back over here at the things, gee, multiprocess. What that's all about is to say, look, there's going to be multiple GAMs running, as sub guys intelligently combine all the data together. So we go down here and we come over here. And now when we do that, now everything works because we've said we want to redirect the output to file list.csv, but you tell GAM, but there are going to be multiple people doing it. Read the people, do the print, and now file list is intelligently done. One header row, everything's combined. Here's test user 2, here's test simple, other files. Okay. So the key to the whole deal here, when you're trying to read a CSV file and output CSV information to some other file, is this multiprocess keyword. Other GAM guys say, here's my output, put it in the bucket. Here's my output, put it in the bucket. They also tell it, here's my header row, here's my header row. The guy holding out the bucket collects all the data, consolidates all the header values, and then at the very end outputs a consistent output file. Here's the headers, the union of all the headers that all the people had, and here's the data. So remember, the deal is when you're writing these CSV files, I can't write the header row until I know what all the headers are. So you can't, in this case, since they're, in this case 4 or 5 sub-processes, but if there are 1,000 sub-processes, you have to collect the whole deal. If you're doing a single user, forget it, you don't care. There's only one guy contributing the output. But here again, in our case, when we're reading this, we're doing it for, okay. So multiprocess, key, all right. All right, now you say, okay, well now I've got a handle on that, but this is somebody came up the other day and someone said, oh, look, here I want a file list consistently done for all users, okay. That's what we did. Now, but we noticed when we did that, the standard is also capture standard out and standard error in an intelligent way. So here we go. Let's hold on here. And the reason the screen is so little is so I can take all these commands and get them all at once. So there we produced the file where we produced a file list for every user. So we said GAM redirect CSV, file list.csv, But now someone says, gee, but the output was, the getting stuff was confusing. So we say, okay, fine. If we do this one over here as well, and redirecting standard error to the same place, now the processing messages, what am I doing, comes out consistently. And this, in this particular case, it mostly doesn't matter if it's consistent, but in other commands where you're actually redirecting output from standard out, you want to multiprocess that. So all the data for each command intelligently comes out together. You go, great. Now you made one file for all the users, but what I want is a list of files for each different user. I want a file differently. I don't want one big file. I want a file for everybody individually. So I'm going to do this command. Now what we did is we said, okay, notice, gee, the redirect CSV disappeared. But we said, okay, I want to redirect standard out, multiprocess, redirect standard error. Fine, that's all common. Now we're reading the CSV file, but now we're redirecting the CSV on the inside GAM command because we want to produce a file, a different CSV file for each user, okay? And hold on, when I was talking to a friend of Steve's yesterday, he says, never do live demos, okay? That multiprocess keyword is not required. We redo it just. And now what we want to do is we want a different file for each user. So, but we want the outer GAM redirects makes it have clean output here. But now we do the CSV redirect on the inside. So now each inner GAM is going to redirect its CSV somewhere else. And that says now we go, oh, well, there's test simples files and there's test user 2's files. Rather than making one big file, we've moved the redirection of the CSV to the inner GAM. So now every GAM that runs redirects its output